Greetings and hello, Coach Fleischer here, and this is Kinesiology 214. This is Module 2, Session 4, and specifically, this is the virtual lab going over shoulders, or in the case of I'll be using this universally back and forth, shoulders or deltoids. So I'll have both verbiage in this presentation. Now, when you look at the deltoids or shoulders, let's start there. If you look at the shoulders, their actual name is or are the deltoids, and it's so named because it's named after the Greek letter, capital letter D for delta, and that's where deltoid comes from. You can kind of make out this D shaped here as the shoulder muscles, the three heads come down and attach on a deltoid tuberosity on the side of the arm. I grabbed these two pictures. I liked both of them for showing kind of a top side view or a side view and a top view of the delt and showing the anterior medial component and the posterior component of the deltoids. And I thought this was a good representation. It was a good way to kind of visualize that. So they're used in many movement patterns, right? From pressing movements to abduction to flexion. And with the deltoid itself, and let's just talk about the shoulder joint itself. The shoulder joint itself is incredibly mobile. It is incredibly articulate. You can do a number of different activities with it, between throwing, she's throwing javelins, throwing baseballs, swinging a golf club, holding onto a bar and swinging around doing gymnastics. It is unbelievably articulate. It's the most articulate joint in the body. But as a result, it also has the distinction of being one of the most vulnerable joints in the body to injury because it's so dang mobile. So you have to look at this in terms of, yeah, sure, you want to do a bunch of weight and get the delts nice and big and get those snow caps up there, but what you have is you have to work on structure in the shoulder as well. And for this presentation, I'm just kind of going over the main exercises you'll see in a gym so you can kind of orient yourself and get a little bit more accustomed to those. But there are a whole series of exercises you can do, from PNF patterns to external rotation exercises to strengthen the muscles in the shoulder joint before somebody is thrown into, say, like a heavy bench press or a heavy shoulder press type exercise. I also threw out a Wikipedia article for you. If you want to go ahead and have a little intellectual curiosity and jump out, you can click out to this and it'll take you to a wiki article on the delt. And it's actually pretty darn informative, and it's where these pictures came from. So let's jump into this, right? We have these three exercises side by side by side. If you look at this, you have dumbbell front raise, dumbbell side raise, dumbbell rear raise. And with these, you have two that are in primarily the same position, but the movement pattern is different. On this one, the body position is different and the movement pattern is different. You've seen this one before. Okay, so if we look at the front raise, it's mostly anterior head, and this can be done in a thumb up position or palm down position. Both are fine. You'll see people do both. It just slightly changes the emphasis on the shoulder itself. This guy over here, it's a side raise coming out and up, and this one's coming out and up while lying face down. So let's go ahead and let this one play out. Pause him right here. I'll back him up just a smidge for you. Let this one play out over here, side raise. Out and up. Out and up. Pause him right there. And so when you look at these two side by side, your range of motion on this is from a down position where the arm is hanging straight down to where you're raising the hand out and up, roughly about chin height for both. I usually guide people on this one where I tell people it's kind of a photo finish between wrist, elbow, and shoulder. You can use chin as your guide on this. If you have a mirror, it also helps to be able to see themselves in the mirror. You'll see this one done in a bent elbow position here, where people almost kind of be tight, like they're doing a dumbbell side raise like you see on the old Cybex machines, and they're coming out and up like so. That's fine, but just realize it changes the leverage position when you go from here to here, and the weight might be different in this exercise version versus this exercise version. Now, if we go ahead and look at this one over here, lying face down and now going out and up, that's a rear delt exercise, and you're working the muscle fibers on the back side of the shoulder. So if we just kind of wrap ourselves around this real quick, what plane of movement are each of these done in? And I can guarantee there's going to be a matching question somewhere on this when you see these videos. So you know this is anterior head, you know this is medial head, you know this is posterior head. 1, 2, 3. You know this is being done out in front of you, so that is done in sagittal plane. You are correct. This one is done in a range of motion that is in line with the ear, shoulder, and hip, which is Frontal plane. Very good. Nice job. And with this one, you're going out and up. And it's not perfectly, I'm not perfectly parallel to the floor in this one, but it's enough of an angle where if you look at it, it's transverse plane, okay? And just important to note, with all three of these, while lying flat on my back, yes, we're trying to work on rear delt here, but also the rhomboids have to do some work. Trap has to do some work to help stabilize the shoulder. This one, as you're going out and up, you're pretty darn stable in the torso, but you'll see people do single arm going out to the side or even hanging on to like a squat rack and being at an off angle and doing their side raise while hanging on to change the angle of resistance to hit the musculature in the shoulder different. Totally fine, but realize that changes the requirements in the midsection here. This one, because we're going alternate arm, the torso has to do some work to help stabilize. So for all of these, just remember your plane of movement, and for all these, realize you're not only doing shoulder, you have other stuff coming into play. Let these guys play out one more time, get a couple more reps. Oh, man, my shoulders are tired. So let's go ahead and look at this in terms of a multi-joint exercise. With a seated shoulder press, you have dumbbells that want to be pulled straight down to the floor. With the dual action pulley over here to the right, the resistance is at a bit of a off angle, kind of outward. For both though, it's a multi-joint exercise, and the cues I give for my clients are push up to the ceiling and have thumbs about ear height on the way back down. Pushing up, thumbs about ear height, pushing up, thumbs about ear height. Same thing over here. Thumbs about ear height. Yes. And what I have found is, for whatever reason, when you tell people go thumbs about ear height, it's like their brain can wrap themselves around thumbs about ear height much better than elbows just past the shoulders. You know, it's just a quirky little cueing thing that I've picked up over the years, that this cue works way better than this cue with this exercise. As you do this shoulder press exercise and you evaluate these two, notice where the elbow is relative to the shoulder. It is out to the side. So you are working in frontal plane for both of these. The resistance for both is being offered from a lower position, this one being gravity and this one from a pulley. You already know that. And this one, the cables are behind my forearm, just so you know. So as we go through this, there will be another example, and I'll point it out here, where the elbow position is different. It changes the position of the shoulder. But when I have people do shoulder press position, please realize how the head of the humerus articulates in the shoulder joint itself. That articulation causes the head of the humerus to do this in the shoulder joint. And with enough weight on the dumbbells, you actually have a little bit of superior and inferior glide in the shoulder joint as it's doing this. So the head of the humerus doesn't just articulate like this. There's actually a little bit of slide down, slide back up, slide back down and up. With heavier weights, that has a bit of a grinding effect that sometimes your clients just can't handle that. And this position puts the shoulder in this position, right? Seated shoulder press with the elbows out to the side. And that position itself, let me get out of the screen, does a few things. If you look at this external rotation, you'll first see it in the sweatshirt, then my shirt. Look at the fibers in the sweatshirt. See how they're actually rotating? Now, granted, it's a little bit further down the humerus here, but that happens in the shoulder joint with the connective tissue. Now we switch to a shirt so you can see it a little bit differently. Externally rotate, boom. That rotation causes the fabric on the shirt to do this. The fibers that are connective tissue and muscles that cross the shoulder joint actually rotate as well. So think of what's going on in the shoulder joint as you're in this position doing a shoulder press. It can be tough on a shoulder. So you end up externally rotating. What happens is you're doing so under load, and that load and external rotation can be rough on a shoulder. So if you look at this in terms of the connective tissue, this towel represents the connective tissue. As we rotate, watch what happens to the two edges of the Gatorade, or my two edges of my fingers. You rotate and they get closer together. Closer together. And if we do this like the external rotation of my shoulder and rotate back, closer together. Again, closer together. So where I'm going with this is, as you do that external rotation, you're actually taking the shoulder joint and taking the connective tissue and doing this, and that's causing the shoulder to actually get a little bit tighter and go into what's called closed pack position. And with closed pack position, that ringing effect actually brings the head of the humerus tighter to the actual glenoid fossa seen in the shoulder itself. So this example we saw before, where you had some room in here, maybe when you're just in regular regular position, an anatomical position out here, it's still okay. But as you go ahead and do this to the arm, you're doing this to the humerus, and that's actually pulling the head of the humerus into the GH joint. There's a good article I found for you guys. It's a Physiopedia, another Wikipedia type thing, on a GH joint, and they have some specifics regarding closed pack position. Where it has its place in athletics is this. If we jump out to next slide here, you'll notice this gentleman is doing a snatch movement. And as he's doing his snatch movement, these athletes are coached to do several things. One of the specific things that we're talking about today is they are taught to externally rotate in the shoulders. They are literally taught to externally rotate, extend the elbow. So now that load of that bar is not placed just on the muscles. You'll never see somebody get into a snatch movement and catch and have to do this and push the weight up. That usually results in a missed attempt. The successful attempts, they have their feet popping on the floor. At the same time, they snap the bar above the head and receive and catch in an externally rotated position in the shoulder, also with a fully extended, perhaps hyperextended, depending on the person, elbow position, which now causes the loading of this bar to be offloaded exclusively from the muscles to now the structure of the body. So the actual closed pack position has its place for this population. Not for the general population. I would not ever have my clients ever lock out a joint, ever. But for some athletics, like Olympic weightlifting, oh, absolutely. This as well as a jerk. When you go ahead and do a jerk movement, pop that weight up there. Those athletes are taught to lock those elbows out, make a pillar, and have that weight rest on that pillar, and it's nice and strong structurally, and it's not as much muscle as this structure of the body. So deltoids again, but we're going deltoids, and we have a multi-joint exercise here. So we have a lot going on upstairs and a lot going on downstairs. Remember when I mentioned pay attention to the position of the upper arm and the shoulder? You'll notice now this elbow is more towards the front, so it takes it out of a frontal plane movement, makes it more sagittal. And you'll notice I have left foot forward as I'm working with my right hand in sagittal plane. So upstairs we have a shoulder exercise, multi-joint, and downstairs we have a leg exercise that is also multi-joint. Over here, this is a dual action pulley, same movement pattern, but what you'll notice on this is I do half of my set with one foot forward and half of my set with my other foot forward to add variety into the workouts. Same rules of thumb, you try to go thumbs about ear height, but the elbow is more out in front, which makes it a little bit more sagittal oriented. And for both of these, because it's the way it's set up, it's actually asymmetrical loading because you have one dumbbell on one side of the body. Let's take a look. And up we go. The balance on this will be different when I switch my feet. Whoa, whoa. And there you go. Not too bad, not much wobbling. And it's that change of position. So you can subdivide a set, and if you're focusing on shoulders for the day, you'll have a set of 10 here, and you might do 5 with one foot, 5 with the other foot. Totally fine, totally appropriate. And I'll do that with clients. I tend to stick with dumbbell in right hand with left foot forward, or dumbbell in left hand with right foot forward. I go in opposition on this one. It just works better with the dumbbell. All right. So with delts, let's go into one more here. I got a little time left. With this this presentation, if we look at dual action pulley and dumbbells, I'm sorry the one on the left is a little bit backlit, but if you look at this, there's a cable in one hand and a dumbbell in the other. Asymmetrical loading. Dual action pulley is providing resistance from a slightly down and back position. So the resistance curve here is greatest towards the bottom. The dumbbell in my left hand, the resistance curve is greatest when it's out in front because it wants to be pulled straight down to the floor. Over here, the cable crossover is coming across the body. And so the resistance is greatest, probably in this range right in here, give or take. As soon as I go out and further, if I were to go up here with my hand, and my arm is in line with the cable, the resistance would actually shut off. And the dumbbell is offering the greatest resistance out here. So keep this in mind as we look at these two side by side. Out and up. And I'll play these a couple times here. Play, play. You can change how this feels, and think of this in terms of, with this, you can see my torso is kind of wobbling around a little bit as I'm doing that exercise because the resistance is forcing my midsection to do a little bit of work here. And it's a little bit different over here. Just some food for thought. All right, guys, have a good one.